good to be together here this morning. Grateful again for the opportunity to be here. And certainly challenging times, as seems like so many of our regular scheduled plans seem to be always kind of tentative at this point, knowing the things that are going on in our world and adjusting some of the changes. So you never really know what you're going to do from one day to the next. And of course here, an adjustment for a lot of children who normally would be enjoying perhaps their final or first time back at a congregation where they had maybe been away from camp for a week. And this, of course, has the situation with our this COVID-19 has interrupted that. And as I was thinking about that, was thinking about just that feeling. I remember I always experienced it whenever I came home from camp. It was always a great time. Being together with other kids your own age, getting to meet new friends, reminisce with other ones you haven't seen in a while. And you always realize there is something kind of building up, that kind of lump in your throat that finally is released when you go home and you see your mom and dad and you see your brothers and sisters. And maybe it was nice to get away from them for just a little bit, but you always know it's always great to come back home. And you realize maybe there's a little bit of homesickness there. In fact, I remember just how easy that was to see. I believe it was Alice's first year at camp, and we were excited to hear all the things that she was saying, hopefully that she had enjoyed it. And I never forget, I remember we pulled into the camp area, and she saw the van. She came running up, put her face up against the window, and it would have been would have almost wondered if I was picking up someone from a POW camp. She was so excited, almost relieved that we were coming to get her. And that's a familiar feeling I think we all have. And that being said, as we turn to Matthew chapter 26 and seeing some of the things that Jesus was experiencing, this is something that there's an interesting word that Matthew uses that captures that feeling. Jesus was also homesick. It describes the feelings he was having when he was in the garden, and as he's praying to his Father. Perhaps in this particular prayer, perhaps had never felt more closer to his Father, because he recognizes, we all know, he was getting very near getting to go home. But it still was not time yet. There's still things he had to do. And some of that's the hardest part of homesickness, when you want to go home, but you can't. You want to leave so badly, but there's still some things left to do. And can we picture Jesus and have that captured feeling and put that in this scene here in Matthew chapter 26? We begin reading in Matthew chapter 26, beginning in verse 30. It says, "After singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, 'You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike down the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee.' But Peter said to him, 'Even though all may fall away because of you, I will never fall away.' Jesus said to him, 'Truly I say to you, that this very night, before a rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, 'Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you.' All the disciples said the same thing too. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and said to his disciples, 'Sit here while I go over there and pray.' And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and began to be grieved and distressed. And then he said to them, 'My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me.' And he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will.' And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, 'So you men could not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying, that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.' He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, your will be done.' Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy, and he left them again. and went away and prayed a third time, saying the same thing once more. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Behold, the one who betrays me is at hand. There's an interesting word. I'm not even going to attempt to say it or pronounce it, but that's the word. And it is translated distressed. Distressed. The meaning of this word is very interesting because it actually means homesick. At no other time during the earthly existence of Jesus could Jesus have ever felt more away from home. Think of all the things that are going on, or things that he would not have had to experience in his home. Betrayal. In Jesus' home, angels constantly, day and night, worship him. Day and night, angels do not cease to say, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord, the Lamb. Honoring him, casting their crowns before him. There is no betrayal in the home of Jesus. All surround him. All are loyally honoring him. And here, he's witnessing those that have been the closest to him earthly are going to scatter. They're going to flee. They're going to leave him. And he's going to have one actually betray him, handing him over, allowing him to be killed. He's going to be hated. He's going to be spit upon. He's going to have individuals shouting horrible things at him, laughing at him, mocking him, despising him. He's going to experience something he had never, ever had experienced ever before, and that is a distance from his Father. He is literally going to be bearing in his body the weight and the burden and the sins of all mankind, and he's going to experience that separation that he had never, ever felt. No wonder he uses this word. He says, my soul is deeply distressed. Jesus longed to go home. And it's interesting how I believe so many of us, perhaps in this period of the last few months, maybe have been feeling that uneasiness of doing things that we aren't familiar with, things that don't seem to be normal, things that are out of our element, things that force us to do things that we don't want to do, things that don't seem to make any sense to us at all. And I believe all of us perhaps are sensing. Do you ever sense that sense, that longing for change, that longing for, I don't want to go through this anymore. I don't like this. This is not normal. This is not what I should be feeling. This is essentially what Jesus was going through. It was a homesickness. It's an awful feeling, but it's a natural feeling. It's a good feeling. It's a feeling that longs for something so much better. It's something that says, I cannot wait until finally restrictions, difficulties, restraints are no longer a part of our world, a part of our life. And perhaps we feel that, but don't even recognize maybe ultimately what that means. Especially when maybe, as some have even decided, who knows what new normal may ever look like, if whatever going back to normal might ever be possible, at least on this earth. And yet we feel it. Yet we long for it. And I would say that all of us, at some point in time, the things that we go through that we feel is uneasy, is unnatural, is discouraging, difficulty, we all, whether we recognize or not, are also longing for home. There's a home that pulls us to a place of normalcy. There's a home that pulls us to a place of contentment and a place of permanence. It's interesting, as we see this word is also used in another passage, and we see again how it is parallel to what Jesus was feeling. Someone else felt this. If you turn over to Philippians chapter 2, again, the same word is given. In Philippians chapter 2, beginning in verse 25. He says, but I thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and fellow worker and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger and minister to my need, because he was longing for you all and was distressed because you had heard that he was sick. For indeed he was sick to the point of death, but God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, so that I would not have sorrow upon sorrow. In other words, notice that verse, that word of verse 26 said, he longed for you all and was distressed because you heard that he was sick. In other words, he felt the sympathy. He felt the sense of people praying for him. That he was tapping into that mindset of other people who were almost miserable with him, and sensing and hoping that he would be relieved from it. And it touched him. It moved him so much because he was away from the very ones who were longing for him to get better. And he said, I'm so distressed. I long to be with these kinds of people. He says, it would be wonderful fun if we could be face to face to be with you. You know, there is an individual who longs for us to be relieved from all pain. You know, there is one who looks at us the same way, who also has that same sense of he's homesick for us. Watching us suffer, watching us go through difficulty. We are not going through this alone. And just as this individual realized, it was an amazing sensation of encouragement. Somebody saw his difficulty and was sympathizing for him, and how he longed to be with someone who had that much concern and care for him. We see that when Jesus was actually beside individuals who were mourning the death of their brother, Lazarus. It says he was distressed in spirit. It says that he was torn apart. And he himself, when he sees us mourn, when he sees us weeping, when he sees us struggling in life, he longs for us to be relieved. So no wonder there is a sense of homesickness, but we need to put it in the proper place. And sometimes we do. We want to relieve that homesickness in so many other places, and yet it only agitates, it only makes it worse, it only makes us long even more. And yet notice there is one who sees us, who wants that to be relieved. And there's a way that we can connect to that and help us so that one day we can have that hope that one day we will be home. But notice in Romans chapter 8, we see this sensation or idea revealed here in Romans, the 8th chapter. It says, no wonder that as we go through this life, as we go through the experiences of uncertainty, of change, of alterations, because we are actually presently living in a physical world that is also homesick. Do you realize that we live in a present creation that is also homesick for something better, for a change to take place? It says this actual creation was subjected to a curse from the Garden of Eden. Back when sin entered the world, it says creation itself is longing. There's a longing, a homesickness of, I want to go back to complete restoration. So in other words, we're living in a world that's the mentality. So no wonder we are affected by that. Notice it says in Romans chapter 8, verse 18, he says, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the anxious longing, homesickness, longing to be home or to be reconciled or to be changed, waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope, that the creation itself also will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body. For in hope we have been saved. But hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he already sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, with perseverance we wait eagerly for it. And just as a child away at camp, or away, whatever situation is, longs to be back home, don't we as parents also experience the same thing almost vicariously through our children? We know how much they long to be home, and it aches in our heart. And we may be going into their bedroom and seeing the empty spot, or maybe they would be curled up in their own bed, seeing the clean bowls, tucked away in the cupboards. Well, that's a nice relief, but how you wish you could see them dirty. Again, filled with their favorite cereal or milk all over the table. And we look at that and we, oh, I can't wait till they get back home. We are in the presence of a creation that looks at us and cannot wait for us to get home. Isn't that amazing? The creation sees all of us going through this stuff and saying, one day you're going to get home and cannot wait. So if you sense that, if you feel that, no, that's not unusual, it's natural. In fact, the Lord is sensing that for us as well. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, here's what Paul said about this understanding of how much the creation itself wants us to be where we belong. Understanding that we are distant and far from where we should be. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, he encourages us with these words in verse 16. 2 Corinthians 4:16 says, "Therefore we do not lose heart, but though our outer man is decaying, yet our inner man is being renewed day by day, for momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory, far beyond all comparison. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. For we know that if the earthly tent, which is our house, is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For indeed in this house we groan, longing to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven." I can attest to that not only as a camper, but as a counselor and in other situations of life. That even though maybe you're in a situation where there are some pleasant things happening, some good times being had, but when you're out of your element, when you're still adapting to new surroundings, when things are not as familiar as you'd like them to be, even you can see it. Everyone looks around in the morning, and then always there's this look of expectation, because it's always the same thing, at least at the camp that I was always familiar with, is right usually before breakfast was served. We have mail. And the looks on the children. Did Mom and Dad write to me? A longing to say, if I could just read this letter and get a taste of what it's like back home, I'll be able to get through this difficult. Maybe I had a bad day yesterday, and hopefully maybe today's a little bit better, but how I long for the things that were normal, that I'm familiar with back home. Now, that's what this book is. These are the letters from our Father, who knows that we are away from home. And that's what essentially what Paul is saying, is that there is a way that we can long, we can put ourselves in that place, and we can look forward to where our Father is writing to us, pleading with us. And through His Word, we can have this connection where hopefully, even though we're having this homesickness and we still have to endure some things, just as Jesus was going to have to endure some things, and how as our Father longs for us to come back home, we need this Word. This Word is that connection that we have. And notice he says in verse 1, he says, even though we have this building not made in the heavens, notice in verse 2, "For indeed in this house we groan, longing to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven, inasmuch as we, having put it on, will not be found naked. For indeed, while we are in this tent, we groan, being burdened, because we do not want to be unclothed, but to be clothed, so that what is mortal will be swallowed up by life. Now he who prepared us for this very purpose is God, who gave to us the Spirit as a pledge." Verse 6, "Therefore, being always of good courage, and knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight." We have mail. That's how I always love that, especially the new kids, the younger ones. You can see that throughout the day clutching those letters. They read them again and again. Some of them maybe get one a week. You know, that one letter tucked under their pillow, they're reading it at night. And that's how they get through. this is how we're going to get through this. We need to stay connected to the one who longs for us to be home, who sympathizes with our sense of homesickness, who sympathizes with all this disconnect and discombobulation, and wants to tell us it's only for a short while, and one day we're going to be together. If you can stay true to me, faithful to the Word, focused on where you're going. By faith, he says, by faith. That's how we walk through this life. And that being said, so then what's the answer? What do we do with that while we sit and while we read, while we clutch the Word, while we stay connected to our Father who longs for us to tell us of what lies ahead? Well, then we wait for what Paul describes in 2 Timothy chapter 4, which also is something that I can remember children, maybe even parents doing it. You know how maybe they might have a little calendar that had the big highlight, the big happy dance, the big exclamation point. Here's the day of camp. But in a big red circle, here's when we come home. Here's when we come home. And they're counting down, they're marking down, and they're looking to what? Here's the point of departure. And every day gets a little bit closer. Paul had that mentality. That's what Paul was saying to Timothy. He said, I've been counting down, and I can tell I'm getting close. And that was what gave him a sense of comfort and contentment, wrestling through, I long to be home. My Father wants me home. He's sending me these comforting thoughts, and through the Spirit I draw closer to Him. But in the meantime, I count down and I look for my departure. That's what he says in 2 Timothy chapter 4. Read there in 2 Timothy chapter 4. He says there in verse 6, he says, I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I think of that the way that a child looks at. I remember when I was at camp, and you always was at one spot, and you'd all sit on the picnic tables, and you'd almost look, and first you'd see the dust, and you knew, oh, there's a car coming. And then you try to figure, is that a van or a car? Is it an SUV or? Oh, van! My mom and dad have a van. And then when you knew it was them, it's done. Yes, there were tears being shed that others would not be able to see each other maybe for a while, but still the joy. Paul knew that the time of his departure was getting close, and that gave him comfort. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 6, I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. In the future there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. In other words, I'm going home, and that's where I'm going to stay, and that's going to be the most comforting, most constant, never-ending state of bliss and joy, the reward of finally making it through the tumultuous experiences in this present life that Paul had to go through, saying, finally I get to go home. And not only to me. Not only to me. And I remember sometimes, maybe you'd see somebody, all of a sudden you see the excitement, they're packing their bags, you see mom and dad hugging them, kissing them, packing their things up, putting their belongings, saying goodbye to everybody, and then they'd go home, and then maybe you'd see one of the children or one of the campers looking back at someone else who has still had to wait for mom and dad and saying, I'll see you again soon. I'm sure they won't be here much longer. And this is Paul's way of saying to Timothy, my departure is getting very close. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to what this is going to mean. But I want you to know your departure is coming too. All of our departures are coming to a point. And again, if we as faithful followers of the Lord put that longing, put that homesickness in the right place. Longing to be at heaven, the place where God longs for us to be there. We can, in faith and hope, look for the time of our departure. Very quickly, I just want to look at this word, because this word is a very interesting word. It has a very interesting visual that Paul wanted Timothy to see. When he said, the time of my departure, he didn't want him to think, because one time we think, well, what that means is he's going to die. Well, that means death. How can that be like going home after the end of camp? Well, Paul knew how frightened we are of death, how uncertain death seems. So he used this word, and this word has the picture of a sailing ship. When Paul said, my departure is at hand, it was of a ship that had been through stormy waters, long voyages, all the different trials and all the scary circumstances, but finally, this ship was finally coming into the calm, still waters of the harbor and was going to pull and finally be at rest and be home, be done with the voyage. That's why in faith we look forward to that day. Not enough to be morbid about death, but to look at it as the way we would in any other circumstance of when we're not home. It's when we get to go home. It's the time of our departure when all these choppy waters, these storms we go through will be over, and we will finally be in the harbors to be at rest. Another image he has is of a soldier. It also can mean of a soldier who's fought long and hard, who's had many battles, who has many wounds and many scars, who finally gets to take, guess what, the backpack off. Gets to strip down the muddy and battled uniform he's had on, took the shield down, put all his weapons down, and finally, guess what? And notice that don't soldiers, and we see that image of yes, they may be equipped for battle, but deep down, they long to be with their families. They long to be where they can feel at peace. And that's what Paul's saying. Paul said, I also am a soldier who's been fighting, and I finally look forward. I can put everything down. I no longer have to be on guard. Isn't it wonderful for a soldier who can never feel they're at rest? Every slight sound means that maybe someone's around them, to finally no longer have to be suspicious of what may be lurking around the corner. We no longer have to have our guards up. We no longer have to be vigilant. We can finally be at rest and enjoy our existence in heaven. And one final one, it has also the imagery of a piece of fabric that while it has been holding a garment together, finally unwinds to go back to its original state. When it no longer is sensing, well, life is depending on certain things to hold all this together and trying to be in its right place in its right moment, but just a single wound up piece of thread that is just kind of at peace at home in its resting spot. And that's what Ecclesiastes chapter 12 pictures. If you turn over to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, has this very same picture of saying one day we will be unwound. We will be unraveled. There's going to be this unraveling where the body unravels from the soul. And the soul, disconnected from the body, finally no longer has this odd joint connection that we're trying to keep together and trying to keep it going the same thing. Finally no longer has to do that and just be a soul. No longer hindered by all these things in the flesh. He said, that's the image. Paul said, one day my flesh. Was that a problem for Paul? Read Romans chapter 7. Paul said, my spirit longs to serve God, but my flesh doesn't do it. That's what he was referring to. He said, I can't wait till my soul is unraveled. And I no longer have to be tied together with this. And I get to be exactly who God made me to be, unhindered by any of this. And that's what Ecclesiastes 12 points to. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, in verse 6 says, remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed, the pitcher by the well is shattered, and the wheel of the cistern is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. You feel discombobulated. You feel out of place. You feel like this isn't normal. That's rational thought. It's normal because we're not meant to live here. We're not destined to stay here. And so all the struggle and all of the fighting is normal. So what we do is we can hopefully, as Jesus did, when we sense that homesickness, can stay connected to our Father in faith, being comforted, knowing how much He longs for us to be with Him, how much He anticipates and certainly cannot wait for us to finally be relieved from all of the hindrances that we are going through. And one day it will finally be over, but hopefully we prepare for that before it is too late. The gospel preaches that today is the day of salvation. While we may not know when the time of our departure is, today is the day to make sure that we don't miss that appointment. And so if you are with us, if you've never obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ and never put Him on in baptism, never confessing that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, we encourage you that you would respond, that you would realize that that homesickness has an answer, and God seeks to bring you home. And Jesus, who experienced that for us as He went to the cross, He made the proper preparations through His blood that we could, as He died and was buried and resurrected, we also can die to this sinful flesh, this sinful world, no longer be lured by it, controlled by it, but freed by it, and give ourselves completely to the Lord, and to be reborn in baptism, forgiven of our sins, to walk in newness of life, to be connected to the one who longs so for us to finally be home. And we encourage anyone who's never done that you would come to the front. Let us assist and help you while we stand and sing this song of encouragement. Won't you come and put Christ on in baptism while we sing this song together?